Good morning, Mr. Peck.
Good morning, Gangwei.
Thanks for sharing the time with us or with our audience, that is the voters.
No problems, happy to have a chat to you.
While I was preparing, I got this bottle of water.
Yes.
Duncan Peg water.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the best water around. So what I do with the water is I donate it to community groups and sporting groups, and they can either give it away or if they sell it, they keep the money.
Okay.
So it's been a good little fundraiser for some PNCs and sporting groups over the years.
Yeah. So how is the campaign generally going?
I think it's going well. So as you know, we have an election on October 31, and we've still got another week of Parliament to go before the writs are issued and the official campaign period starts. So at the moment, I'm focused on what I've been doing for the last nearly 6 years, which is working hard for the community. And there's also going to be more campaigning to come as we lead up to October 31.
Right. So you have been in the Legislative Assembly since 2015, right?
That's correct,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's quite a while now, and you're campaigning for the next term.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you please introduce yourself a bit to our audience?
Yeah, sure. So I was first elected in January 2015, and I've been really lucky to represent our local community since this time. I was born in Townsville, and I did all my schooling in Rockhampton, and I moved to this area on the south side 23 years ago because I wanted to study law. And I studied law at Griffith University. I also did a commerce degree, majoring in public policy. After graduation, I worked as a lawyer in the private sector, so that's where I've spent the majority of my career outside of Parliament. And during that time, I did a Masters in Commercial Law at the Queensland University of Technology because I worked in the city.
Yeah.
There weren't online lectures in those days like our students get to enjoy, so it was convenient for me to study there and to do that.
Yeah.
I also studied for a couple of years at the Institute of Modern Languages at UQ. I studied Mandarin.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, I haven't been able to keep that up since I've been in Parliament because I've been too busy, but obviously with a really large Chinese community here, I like to practice where I can, but I don't claim my pronunciations are always the best.
It's not an easy language to learn.
No, and I think it's got its challenges, but it's a beautiful language as well. So I keep trying to practice where I can.
Well, if you can say, ni hao, things like that would be enough.
Yeah,
I guess.
I've got the basics down.
Yeah, that's good. I'm sorry to learn from the media that you were diagnosed with cancer. That was last year, was it? Or earlier this year?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, over 100,000 people in Queensland are diagnosed with cancer each year. And
But you look fabulous now.
Yeah, look, I'm feeling good. My treatment's been going really, really well. And I did want to say to the community at large and also to the Chinese community, thank you for your support. And friendship. So many people sent me messages of support for me, and it was really, really touching, and the community support's been fantastic. I'm feeling good and a lot better now than I was last year, so I thank people for that.
So can I ask the treatment, how the treatment is going?
Yeah, it's going well.
That's good.
Yeah, so
that's good.
And I've been back at work, back at Parliament, doing everything as I normally do.
Yeah. Because the technology, is so advanced, and cancer is not that fatal nowadays. Quite a few of my friends are cancer survivors.
And we've got Daffodil Day coming up, which is a fundraiser and a day for people suffering from cancer. And look, in a way, I've learned a lot because I know that cancer doesn't discriminate. It affects people from all walks of life, and a lot of people have come up to me privately and said, I had cancer so many years ago, and shared their personal stories with me. They're not necessarily public about it. Yeah. So, it affects people in all walks of life. It's a terrible disease, but the treatment options and technology keep getting better, and there's a lot of support out there for people as well. And I was supporting cancer charities, since I've been elected, and also before I was diagnosed.
With your personal experience.
Yeah.
So it's been a while now. You look fabulous.
Thank you.
I guess it doesn't affect your working.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. No, I know there's two main candidates, one from Labour, one from Liberal National. Can you introduce, just tell our audience what would you think your policy, the important part of your policy that the voters should know?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I've lived in this area for 23 years, and what I've seen is the tremendous growth in our community since then. When you look at Cullenvale Central down the road, it was a grassy field when I first moved here, and there's been a lot of great people who've moved here over time. The key is when you have growth like we've had in Brisbane's outer southern suburbs, you've got to have the infrastructure to match. And I don't think we've always had that. So since I've been elected, a big push for me has been infrastructure investment. So we've had many, many millions of dollars spent on our local schools. So we've got a new performing arts centre, which I opened last week with Minister Grace and the Stretton State College community, a wonderful performing arts complex that'll be able to be used not only by Stretton State College students, but the whole community. It's state of the art, and we've got new classrooms going in there. We've got new classrooms at Sunnybank Hills State School as well, and we've had investment across all our schools. We've got new classrooms and new buildings being built at Runcorn Heights State School as well, so tens of millions of dollars of investment in our schools, which creates a better learning environment for our students and also provides local jobs for our tradies, which is really important as well. Yeah. The other big infrastructure focus I've had is on roads. So we had it was called the Logan Enhancement Project, but it was based here. So what it did was it improved access to the Gateway and Logan motorways. So if you go down Bow Desert Road, you're able to access the Logan Gateway motorways a lot safer. And there was a right-hand turn across multiple lanes of traffic with no lights. So we managed to fix that so it's safe. And I'm very pleased to announce recently that we've got $30 million being invested in creating 3 lanes each way, so 6 lanes in total on Bow Desert from Illawina Street onto the motorways. So it'll allow everyone to get to where they need to go quicker and better. You can spend more time with your families, because one of the challenges for people that live on the outer southern suburbs is if you're going into the city for work, it's commute times and traffic management. So we've done what we can to improve that, and we've also put a new footpath along Bow Desert Road northbound from Illawina Street as well. So there's been significant infrastructure investment that I'm really, really proud of in our local community. The other thing is I represent the most multicultural electorate in Queensland. So more than 50% of people are born overseas, and more than 50% of people speak a language other than English at home. And on those two factors, my electorate, it's the highest. So supporting multiculturalism is really, really important to me and should be throughout Queensland. So we've managed to double the funding for multicultural events from 1 million to 2 million, which was an election commitment. So what that means is we have more events supported by government that the whole community can enjoy, and a lot of them happen here in our local area, being the most multicultural electorate. We've also introduced a multicultural charter and a multicultural advisory council. So in terms of multiculturalism, our government has put in a lot of work to enhance and celebrate multiculturalism and support community harmony. So that's a big thing for me. Traditionally, August is Multicultural Month, so it was originally a week. We made it a month. Bit of a challenge this year. So normally I host multicultural awards every year. Like most events, sadly, that can't happen this year, unfortunately, but I'll still do some things to recognise our community leaders in a different way. And probably the other thing the community should know is we've opened up the annual multicultural grants for next year. They're currently open at the moment, so if people go to my Facebook page, they'll be able to see the link there. So any community groups, including of course Chinese community groups that want to hold events or host events and seeking some government financial support, that's open at the moment.
That's good, because the communities need support in terms of the multicultural.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm the chairman of the Photography Society.
Oh, wonderful.
We do get the funds from government as
well.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that was lots of information.
Sorry.
That was good. That was good.
And look, there's a lot more I can talk about, but I think there's some key policies and achievements.
You talked a lot about the schools, right? There's a discussion around about your safe school policy, and especially about male and female students sharing toilets, things like that. And do you have anything to explain?
Well, it's interesting because it gets around the community. Safe schools isn't part of Queensland education policy and never has been. So it's funny people talk about it because it's actually not implemented in Queensland.
Okay.
And there's not male and female students sharing toilets. So it's interesting. It becomes a discussion point, but I think people need to know facts. So that policy hasn't been implemented in Queensland.
So what was behind that policy?
Well, I'm not completely sure because it's not implemented in Queensland schools.
Okay.
So it's a policy I understand started in Victoria, but I want to be careful because I don't know all the facts surrounding it. But it's a misnomer that safe schools is implemented in Queensland.
Yeah. You've talked about your policies and what you have done. What is your main focus if you're re-elected?
Well, I want to continue to make our local area a better place. I think it's a fantastic place, but we can always make it better. So I want to continue our investment in schools, obviously healthcare and infrastructure. And at a broader level, one of the real focuses of this government and what I want to see is jobs, because obviously we've had a health crisis, a global pandemic that's had economic effects. So we want to make sure we keep people safe. We want to keep the infection rate down, which has been really, really strong. But we also want to support the economy. So we introduced a small business grants program and many local businesses receive some funding for that. We've got an infrastructure program which includes the upgrades to Bow Desert Road, which will be good for the community and good for jobs. Same with the school investments. So I think we need to keep investing in our local community, and we need to make sure that those investments not only provide good infrastructure for the long term, but they also support jobs, and those jobs have flow-on effects. Those tradies that work on those projects, they're going to be buying their lunch locally, supporting our local restaurants, supporting our cafes, and of course, it supports broader professional jobs such as engineering and the like.
So mainly it's schools, jobs, and multicultural, right?
Yeah.
And what about the community safety?
Yeah, community safety is really important, and it's a topic that comes up here.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to put some facts on the table. To me, one crime is one crime too many, and we should be doing everything we can not only to prevent crime.
I have heard things around, and I might agree, I might not,
Yeah, sure.
What do you think about the current safety situation around? Some people are really concerned about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that people talk about in our local community, but I think it's important to put facts on the table. So the reality is we have more police employed in Queensland and locally than ever before. We have more police on the ground, and we'll continue to do that investment. And it's not just police on the ground, it's improving their technology. So the police now have their effectively super iPads, so they can fill out their paperwork on the road rather than spending time back in the station, and that means more police on the beat and out on the ground, which is really, really important. And I'll keep pushing for more investment in police resources. The reality is it was the Labor government, a previous Labor government, that built the Callanvale police station. So our area didn't have a police station until it was built by Labor, and I think our track record is strong on that investment, but we have to keep working with it. And I talked to the police minister, I talked to the police commissioner. So recently we actually had, with some of the racist incidents that were happening against the Chinese community, we had a press conference and event with the police commissioner, the police minister, and the Minister for Multicultural Affairs and Chinese community representatives at the Callanvale police station, which I think was very useful and got a lot of good media coverage. We couldn't have as many people as we hoped to because of the social distancing requirements, but that press conference received really, really strong feedback, and there was a clear message from both the ministers and from the commissioner about racist incidents and trying to scapegoat the Chinese community, which is just ridiculous. So, and there was a really strong, Michael Choi and Michael Ma were there, and they made some really strong statements as well, which I think was really, really good. But in terms of crime and police resourcing, I'm committed to continue to working for it. I continue to push for more resourcing, but I think it's important the community knows that there's more police employed under the Labor Party government than there was under the previous LNP government. So okay. I think on crime, it's easy to talk tough, but you've got to look at people's track records, and I'm happy to compare our track record to the previous LNP government in terms of resourcing any time of the week. Crime's a global issue. Happens, there's no city in the world that doesn't have crime. But having said that, we need to keep working, make sure our local community is not targeted, and also to reduce crime as much as we can. So just last week, actually, I represented the police minister at what's called the Project Booyah graduation. And what it does is it takes young people who are disadvantaged and maybe looking to go down the wrong path, and it's an intensive program to help them, assist them with life skills and assist them with being positive members of our community. So our government invests a lot of money in that program, and it's got a huge track record of success. And for me, it was nice to meet those graduates and see the smiles on their faces, and they talked quite openly about how the program had changed them. So it was really interesting, and I think it's really rewarding, and not everybody knows about the good work of that program, which happens all over the state.
Okay, that's good. You did mention about racism. I guess it's quite sensitive to the non-English speaking communities. I don't think it's a major issue at the moment, but what's your view? Will it become a major issue in certain circumstances?
Well, I think any racism is a major issue. That's the reality. So, as I said, I'm lucky to represent the most multicultural electorate in Queensland. I think in our local community here, people are very supportive of multiculturalism. They actually like living here because it's diverse. You can diverse range of food. I always say you can eat your way around the world out here, but there's still racist incidents that happen. A lot of the big ones come from people who come outside our community, and they come to this community because they know it's the most multicultural. So it's something we have to keep working on and be vigilant about. And you can't ever say you've done enough. We have to keep working on that issue.
The reason for people to be sensitive is in the history. There are racism, violence, and discrimination, and even killing. Nowadays, Australia, I guess, is much different. But to the immigrants, and they tend to think in certain situations, is it possible for the mainstream to be, to turn against the other communities, and would that happen, at all,
Look, I don't think it's reached anywhere near that level, but there's definitely racism in our community, and it needs to be stopped. And the government puts a big investment in multiculturalism and having a Minister for Multicultural Affairs to celebrate our multicultural communities. Racist incidents happen here locally. They are isolated, but one racist incident is one too many, and that's why we created that press conference and statement, particularly with the Chinese community, to make it clear, and the Police Commissioner made it clear, the Minister for Police made it clear, the Minister for Multicultural Affairs made it clear, and I spoke at the press conference as well. To racist incidents are completely unacceptable, and I think the quote, the headline on one of the media articles was a quote from myself when I said, "This racist nonsense must stop." And also, I took a really strong stand early in the pandemic. There was a fake press release released by Queensland Health. And so I spoke to the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jeanette Young, who everybody now knows because she's done a really good job during the pandemic. And I took a really strong stand against that and actually got international coverage to say that it was completely unacceptable and scapegoating our community. So there are people that do the wrong thing, and the challenge we have with online and social media, it does a lot of good things, but also it allows people to spread rumours anonymously as well. So that's one of those things, and so that fake press release was a big incident.
So that kind of racism incidents, in terms of the scale, how big the scale is?
Well, I think it does happen on social media. I think we've all seen that. And the police have better technology to track people down, but some of these people hide behind keyboards. And
if it's one or two incidents, I wouldn't worry too much because the social media does have lots of different things, rumors and lies.
And look, people are intelligent to sort fact from fiction, but with the press release, they'd actually gone to the trouble to make it look like an official with all the badging, and it was misleading the community.
That's the problem.
So I thought it was particularly dangerous, and it also scapegoated our community. So that's why I took a strong stand.
But when I saw it, I realized instantly it's a scam. Because it's so fake.
I guess the other thing about it, the other point I'd probably make is, we've got Pauline Hanson's One Nation, and their members and candidates have said a strong track record of saying a number of racist statements over the years. And I'm really proud that the Labor Party has a policy of always putting One Nation and like-minded parties last on the how to vote cards. The LNP historically doesn't do that. So in the last election, they put One Nation ahead of Labor in the majority of seats, and a couple of seats, including this one, they put Labor ahead of One Nation. So I think that's pretty cynical on the LNP's part, in that a few seats, including the multicultural seats, they put Labor ahead, but then in the rest of them they put One Nation ahead. I'd like to see the LNP join with Labor, take a strong stand and put One Nation last. And they haven't done that, and they haven't done that consistently. So I think that's an important statement of support for multiculturalism as well.
But this year you are not allowed to hand out the how to vote sheets, is it?
We don't know yet, so it's up to the Electoral Commission of Queensland, so that's independent of government, and they'll take advice from the Chief Medical Officer. So we don't know what the parameters will be, but I want people to know postal vote applications will be available, and they'll be pre-poll 2 weeks before election day. So if people either want a postal vote or pre-poll, that'll be available, and I'll provide all those details once they're finalised. They're still being finalised at the moment, and then they'll be voting on the day on October 31 as normal, and there'll be all those social distancing and all those measures in place like there was for the council elections. But ultimately it'll be a decision for the ECQ based on health advice as to whether or not how to vote cards can be physically handed out.
Okay, we talked a lot about our internal issues, and currently the Western countries have some friction with China. It's actually pretty bad. What is your view about the situation currently between Australia and China?
So maybe I'll talk about the Queensland government perspective and then talk about my view on the federal issues. So from a Queensland government perspective, obviously state governments don't have responsibility for foreign affairs, but we do for trade.
But you do have your views.
So we've got 4 Trade Investment Queensland offices in China. So doing business, establishing economic and cultural links, and the government's had a strong commitment to that with trade with China, and obviously China's the biggest trading partner of Queensland. In terms of how things have been handled federally, obviously that's run by Scott Morrison and the federal Liberal National Party coalition. Probably want to say a couple of things. there's always going to be sometimes tension between countries, and every country has to act in its national interest. I think that's pretty axiomatic for anyone that understands foreign affairs, but I think some of the way the federal government's handled the relations with China has been pretty clumsy. I think for Andrew Hastie, a Liberal Party member, to compare China with Nazi Germany is ridiculous, and the Prime Minister should have condemned that statement from Andrew Hastie, but to my knowledge he hasn't, and neither have other LNP members. We've also had the Liberal Senator for Victoria, Senator James Paterson, make some really inflammatory and inappropriate remarks as well.
Okay.
So I think they could handle it better. And the thing is, when relations get testy between countries, that affects trade and that affects jobs as well.
But Australia is one of the Western countries, and China is a communist country. Right? There are substantial differences.
Of course.
There, yeah. So what would you think is the common ground, so to keep the relationship?
Well, I think there's a lot of common ground with China because obviously China's Australia's largest trading partner, but there are differences, and I think we can enjoy those in many ways. So, for instance, I think there's a common theme. Obviously, China's built up significantly over recent years, improved people's standard of living. That's something we want to do in Australia as well, and we want to have a mutually beneficial relationship. So Australia has exported natural resources, which has helped fuel China's growth, and also that money, economic activities and royalties has benefited Australia. But it's got to be more than just economic. There's a lot of cultural ties as well, and I've seen a lot of that happen here locally. And the other thing I think we could do a lot better on is we've got a big Chinese community here. We can use those intercultural links as well with China and also with other countries around the world, not just with relations with China. We've obviously got a significant Indian community, for instance, and all that type of thing. So,
But with Indians, there's no issue at the moment. With China, there's a major issue at the moment.
Yeah. Look, there's definitely issues, but if you look at it historically, there's been issues between various countries at various times, and what you want is a long-term strategic relationship. So, there's always going to be bumps in the road in international affairs.
Yeah.
Those of us who watch that always happens. And I think it's a case of people looking at commonalities, and also where there's differences, there's differences. No country is the same, and we should recognise that.
In the States, Donald Trump is very tough on China at the moment and making lots of decisions. Given the experience, given the history, and Australia are likely to follow American policies in terms of international affairs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for the Chinese community, some people might relate the relationship between two countries and their well-being in Australia. What's your view on that? For example, if the relationship between Australia and China goes really, really bad, and would that affect the Australian communities here at all?
Of course, when relations between countries are strained, it has effects. So we have a strong trade relationship with China, and as I said, if Scott Morrison and the Liberal National federal government mishandle that, of course it's going to have flow-on effects. We live in the world where Donald Trump's the American president. There's an American presidential election happening very soon after the state election. In fact, and we'll see what happens with that. Australia historically has a strong relationship with the US, and you saw that when Scott Morrison recently visited the US earlier in the year. But that doesn't prevent strong relationships with other countries, and Australia should have a strong relationship with China.
Yeah, I'm not talking about how to prevent that to happen. To be realistic, it can happen. Right? Anything can happen.
Yeah, sure.
But if it happens, does it affect the Chinese community's well-being in Australia?
Well, I think there's definitely flow-on effects if there's negative relation. But personally, what I want to see is an improved relationship by the federal government and the Chinese government to work for the benefit of both countries. And,
well, that's the best. You know,
and I think when you look at it historically, that has happened. And what's happened is the trade relationship between Australia and China has benefited both countries. So obviously, if there's sometimes some tensions, sometimes there's disagreements.
Is it safe to say that okay, there's bad times between the countries, you know, but the Chinese community here, they are Australians.
Yes,
you know,
of course.
They shouldn't be affected.
No, of course. Of course, and so it's important that there aren't those racist incidents and attacks on the Chinese community, and I'll always stand with the Chinese community against those.
Yeah.
But yeah, you make a really, really good point.
Yeah. Good. I think I run out of questions.
That's okay. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
We've covered local schools to international affairs and relations. So you've covered some really good local, state, national, international politics. You've quizzed me pretty well.
How many do you watch time? It's about half an hour now, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What would you say to our audience, you know, the voters?
So what I'd say for the voters is at the election, obviously ask for your support. If you care about, for instance, you know, the strong decision we took to close the borders, which has limited the infection rate in Queensland, if you support a strong economy and jobs, and also if you support local infrastructure investment, particularly here on the southern suburbs of Brisbane, I'd really ask for your support. And I think it's important to look at not only what political candidates and political parties say, but what they do. And I'm happy to compare our investment in this local area during the last 5 years of our government compared to the previous LNP government in their 3 years. Their investment track record in our local communities definitely inferior to ours, and I'll always stand up for our community on all issues, whether it's attacks on our community or also getting more funding and resources for our community to make it a better place. I do think overall we live in a fantastic part of Brisbane, a wonderful part of Queensland, but we can always work to make a good place even better, and that's what I've always strived to do over the last 5 and a bit years, and I'll continue to do that into the future.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Peck.
Thank you very much, Gang Wei. 谢谢。
谢谢，谢谢你。
谢谢。
Okay, that's it. Yeah.
You happy with that?
Yeah,
that was good.
That's good. Yeah.
You asked some tough questions, but it's hard because with international affairs stuff,